Hey guys, it's Alexis, aka The Sloth Reader, and I'm here today to do another Top 5 Wednesday video. Top 5 Wednesday is of course hosted by Thoughts on Tomes, so I will link her channel down below as well as the Goodreads group where we post all of our links and such. This week's topic is your top 5 favorite villains, and if you know me at all, you'll know I love a good villain. So many villains, actually. I love villains so much that I had to narrow down a list of 10 that I thought of right off the bat, and so I had a mental villain Hunger Games to decide who actually made it onto this list. So there are a ton more villains that I didn't get to mention on this list, from books, manga, graphic novels, all of that stuff. It was pretty easy. I did decide to take out the manga and graphic novel villains, so I won't be mentioning the Joker, stuff like that, just because I was I could film a whole separate video just on those, so I stick just to books, which helped narrow it down a little bit. But yeah, so some of these are more just morally gray characters, but for specific reasons I consider them to be more villains than others, and whatever, I'll just get into it. The first character I'm going to mention is one that I don't even personally consider to be a villain, but I know a lot of people do, especially because of his actions in the beginning of the book series. Before you get his perspective in the series, he's definitely a villain in book 1, and I would say definitely probably book 2 too. And that is Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire series by George R. R. Martin. Like I said, in this particular book, he definitely is a villain, just because you don't get his perspective in this book, and so all you have is kind of other characters' reactions to the stuff he does, in particular to his interactions with the Starks and the decisions he makes and how that affects the Starks. And so definitely from their perspective, he is definitely a villain, but when you get into the later books in the series and you get Jaime's perspective, I just love Jaime so much, especially because there is something kind of just brooding and melancholic and unapologetic about Jaime. Jaime doesn't try to apologize for the stuff he does. He doesn't try to say that, oh, well, I did it because of this or this. He's just I did it. I take responsibility for that. It happened. And he's so unapologetic about it. In particular, for those of you who've read this book, he does stuff and he literally kind of just shrugs about it, but it's also I don't know, I just think it's part of George R. R. Martin that he picks very interesting characters to have the perspectives from, and just, especially in A Clash of Kings when he's with Brienne, and I have a lot of feelings about Jaime, and actually there were 3 characters from this series I actually wanted to choose because I have mad love for Theon Greyjoy as well, but ultimately Jaime did win out because Jaime is just a multi-layered character, belonging to the Lannister family, who I consider to be a very multi-layer family. The next character I'm going to mention is from one of my all-time favorite series, so it's no surprise that he made it on this list, and that's Holland from the Shades of Magic series by V.E. Schwab. I love Holland. For me, personally, there's something really sexy about Holland, and I guess it's just because, he's kind of tragic, and, you just hear about, all of this terrible stuff that happened to him, and I don't know, he's a lot like Kel, but then he's not like Kel, but then they share, the similarities of the Antari magic, and I just fall more and more in love with Holland as the series goes on, and I love him so much, and I remember half of my status updates while reading this first book were literally just should I have this big of a crush on Holland? Is that normal? I feel like he's a bad guy, but is he really? And I just Holland, man, I just love Holland so much. The next villain I'm going to mention is probably my favorite villain from classic literature, and that is the creature from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I really love Frankenstein for the fact of everybody is morally gray. The creature is definitely a villain for Frankenstein, but Frankenstein is a villain for the creature, and I just love the complexity of the creature's character, which is really beautifully done from Mary Shelley as a writer, with the Chinese box structure she kind of uses to tell the creature story, and I love that he's just this desperate creature who wants to be loved, and he's been constantly you know, jilted and left behind by the man who created him out of blind ambition. And so it's like he does all these vile things, but his ultimate goal is just acceptance. And I just think he's a very well created creature, and so I really like the archetype that came from Shelley's novel of having that misunderstood villain who kind of just wants to seek acceptance. The next villain I'm going to mention is the baddest bitch of them all, and that is Queen Lavanna from the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. One of the reasons I fell head over heels with the Lunar Chronicles is because I love Lavanna as a villain. I think Lavanna is absolutely totally true to the, you know, evil queen from fairy tales, and I love how many layers there are to her. There is her layer of being power hungry, there's her layer of wanting love and beauty and acceptance, there's the world domination, you know, and just, I love how absolutely ruthless Lavanna is. She very much is, this is what I want, this is what I'll do to get it, and I don't care who I have to cut down, who's in my way, and so I think that just absolutely worked beautifully into the narrative of the Lunar Chronicles to have such a cutthroat villain, because it really upped the stakes of all of the things that the main crew were trying to accomplish. The final villain I'm going to mention is one I absolutely love, which is interesting because he doesn't even have the capacity to ever love me back, and that is Aiden from Illumine by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. Aiden is the AI system that runs the ship that part of the story takes place on, and Aiden, in my opinion, is the most complex character in the whole book, which is interesting because he's an artificial intelligence. He doesn't have the complexity or the capacity for human emotions, but it's like he struggles to as an artificial intelligence. And just so many of the pages from Aiden's perspective are so powerful and dynamically done, and that's why I think the format of this book works really well for having an AI character, because there is something kind of mechanical and haunting about, like, Aiden's pages in this book. And let me see if I can find one. Like, I can't handle how just, like, absolutely interesting, like, all of Aiden's pages are, and how much it drew me to his character. And I'm very drawn to artificial intelligence characters anyway, because I think it's really interesting that, like, we're trying to create beings that can do all of the functions of humans, but it's scary when they get too realistic, and so I think that Aiden is a very well-developed character, and I haven't read Gemina yet, but I believe I've been told he is in Gemina, and I'm very excited for that. Alright guys, so those were my top 5 favorite villains. Like I said, this list could have been like an hour long where I just talk about them. I could have done a whole top 5 video for just my favorite villains from A Song of Ice and Fire alone. But I love villains. I find that typically villains are just way more interesting, way more well-written than heroes are, which is a shame because our heroes should definitely be well-written as well, but I am a sucker for a good villain. Anyway, I'll see you guys soon with another video. Bye-bye!